Hello, and thank you for coming to the 10th Annual Lake County Film Festival. This is the Q&A for Always Punch Nazis, which I, wrote a little introduction on, which people in my circles consider anything that is a resistance to fascism. And today, the day after Joe Biden is declared the winner of the presidential election here, and a fascist will soon be out of office, I am really pleased to be talking to Sasha Bortnick, who has a film called A Head Shorter that is playing in this shorts program, and we can talk all about that. Sasha, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am fantastic, honestly. I believe that the election has cut a lot into my viewership over the first part of the festival, but I have a lineup today of really fantastic political stuff to talk to people about. Even the last one I did, which was not a political one, we ended up touching on one of the shorts. He said he was influenced by the 2016 election and marginalized people feeling like they are already dead, basically. Briefly, both of these films are about Nazis getting their just desserts, getting the things that they deserve. But since he's not here, let's just mostly talk about your film, A Head Shorter, which I always say, to anytime this topic comes up, that World War II, as a way to talk about how it really is the world, I always say that there are a million stories. There have already been a million stories from World War II that have been told. I have seen countless documentaries, countless narratives. It's unbelievable. But yet, this is a fantastic story that has not been seen. Where did you find this story? Where did you find his story?
He's my great uncle.
Oh, wow!
I've always, so pretty much. I've always known kind of vaguely that he had an altercation or like with someone while he was in a concentration camp. I didn't really know the details of the story though, until I spoke to him a couple-ish years ago, and got the full, really detailed story from him, which is in the film. That's how I found it. I mean, I really set out just to interview him, and his whole life is very fascinating, Naftali Deutsch. And this kind of just came up during that interview and obviously shocked me and took me back, and that's how I found it.
I feel like I'm jumping way ahead on my list here, but I noticed in the closing credits that he's written a book. Are there other stories that you could have additionally? Are there other stories that are just as interesting that we need to find out about? Do I need to? I already put it in my wish list, but
I mean, yes, I think this was like very difficult to make in the beginning because I had so much footage and I had his book and I knew his life story, and editing that down to just 24 minutes basically was really tough because he has a very, very fascinating life, and there's definitely other stories that he has that are worth telling, and hopefully one day I can do that. But started with this one. But yes, he's a very, very interesting guy.
That's great. Again, it's usually my last question is usually, what are you working on next? And I hope we're going to get some more of his stories. It sounds like it would be a great feature with all these different things.
Yeah, it would be for sure.
What led you to decide to animate this story? So many short documentaries, rely heavily on interviews and then just some B-roll footage that they found. But you have animated so much of it in such a unique style. Where did the decision come from? And tell me about your style.
So the decision came kind of while I was interviewing him and hearing like how vivid of a storyteller he is. It just felt I was inspired to pair it with animation on top of the fact that like I love the Mouse comic books, and I always really enjoyed that sort of juxtaposition of this like animation or cartoon like stuff with this really serious topic. And on top of that, he's 88 years old, and the story is about him when he's only 12 and a half. And I thought that animation would be a really powerful way to sort of time travel and remind us, like, keep us present in the fact that he was really just a kid. I think it can be easy to forget that when someone in their 80s is talking about, you know, something that happened to them when they were much younger. I think we don't necessarily think 12 and a half. We could think like maybe he was 20 years old. Maybe he was just like, I really, really wanted to drive home that he was a child. That was like a really interesting and important part of the story for me. And I thought that seeing him animated on screen that way would really just like keep that present in our minds. That's kind of how I got there. I just really, like, while he was talking, I was like, this would just be really cool. I don't know. And then I kind of just ran with that, like, sort of thought that it's like a light bulb moment. And then I just kind of went with it. And it actually started to make a lot of sense. And the style, I really wanted to do, like, I wanted it to feel like World War II, like propaganda poster feel. And so that's where the inspiration came from. And then, you know, just like did a bunch of research and found a lot of references of posters like that I really loved. And I worked with Sole Proprietor Studios. It's animation studio. And we just came up with this style. So.
Yeah, it's really striking. And I guess Mouse is a great example of really balancing the tone. And I remember him saying that it was the only way he could really make something about such a difficult time, about such a heartbreaking, about such a heavy subject, was to give it some lightness. And you do that so well here. Do you have any advice on balancing tone like that?
Okay. I think a lot of it, I don't know if this is really advice. I just think every story, regardless of how, I don't know. I think I don't want to say humor, but I think that, like, as humans, we always find humor, even probably more so in like really, really challenging times. And I think that that's something that my great uncle definitely has, a really great sense of humor, or not even a sense of humor, just like not taking himself too seriously, and being able to, I just think that there's more of that like balance and tone and humor with like horror naturally than we sometimes think. And I think that if you just talk to someone and really listen to them, I think it's going to be there regardless. I think, obviously that's not a hard and fast rule. I just think that it's not that hard to find humor in like really horrific, challenging stories, because I just think that that's kind of really natural for us. It's a coping mechanism, I think. So I don't know. That's kind of my advice, is just like pay attention. And I think it's just there. I don't think it's actually that like hidden or difficult to extract.
It certainly can be for some people. I think it depends on the person, but certainly some people.
Absolutely. I think like.
But that's me.
I think as like someone making a film, like maybe your subject doesn't necessarily see the humor, but I think it's obviously a very delicate balance. It really depends on the person you're talking to and interviewing. And like, of course, there are moments that are just not funny. And it's not really about that. It's more just like being able to laugh at the like absurdity of something that's so terrible. I don't know.
I'm always finding the uplifting parts. You know, it's just one Nazi, but that's one. That's enough. Even a movie as depressing as The Gray Zone, I always felt at the end. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it mostly covers the Solder Commandos, and you know, they succeeded in a mission that saved, you know, thousands of people. And even though it's such a dreary and depressing film, I'm uplifted by the end that people were able to, you know, make a difference in so many lives just that way.
Right.
A lot of the animation style is you know, obvious in its, you know, propaganda posters, and the motion graphics and things are obvious, but is there a purpose behind all of the newsprint and books that are used as backgrounds?
Yes, there is actually. We found newspaper and like Hungarian newspapers mostly from that time period, and we use them as like the text as the background. And if you look closely, it actually the text has to do with what's going on in the scene and what's going on in the world at that time. So it's very deliberate. Um, and it looks really cool on a big screen, which we didn't really get to do that much of this year. You can still see it on your phone and computer, but in the theater, like you can really get this, like you can actually really read what's on that newspaper in a lot of the scenes. So that was the thinking behind it.
I was starting to, but I was so distracted by the other things. I'll have to do it multiple
Yeah,
times.
it's not really meant to like, you're not really supposed to be like doing that, but if you just happen to catch a word here and there, it definitely relates to what's going on. So,
Cool.
but
that goes hand in hand.
And the visual and
Yeah, it's one of those things that you wouldn't notice, but it adds so much that texture.
Yeah. Also, I just wanted like one inspiration for that was that my great uncle at the beginning like discusses how they got a lot of their information back in that time, and there were two specific newspapers that he discussed. So it kind of came from tying that into like the whole story. So.
That ties in really well with my question about research and especially reference photos. Did you how closely were you able to model these things after the real objects, especially the camps?
Yeah, I think actually really well. We that was really important to me and the animators, and we found, using Yad Vashem's database and all these other resources that are out there, we really spent a lot of time on the animatic and making sure that things were very accurate, or as accurate as they could be. So I think we did a good job, and I think like especially the camps are they're pretty on point. Like if you were to reference, the gates or the layout or the like, we pretty much just copied exactly how it was. So.
Wow. Throughout the film, most of what we see are red triangles on the jumpsuits or prisoner outfits. Was he? I was trying to figure out. Was he then a political prisoner? Not. I didn't really see yellow stars on almost anyone. So he was a political prisoner.
Oh, so the yellow star? No, he wasn't. So he had a red triangle with yellow line on top of it, I believe. That was not a political prisoner. That was basically for Jews. And the yellow star was something that was done before the concentration camps.
That was in the ghetto.
It wasn't. It was on some of the uniforms, and it was more. Sorry, it was more in the ghetto and before they were actually put in the camps. But having just the red triangle is like a political, and also depending if it was facing up or down, that meant something else as well. So my great uncle was in the camps because he was a Jew, and the red triangle with the yellow indicates that you're there for your religious beliefs.
Sure. I think the two yellow stars I saw were people getting off the train, so maybe they hadn't. The idea was they hadn't gotten.
That was like in their own hometowns before they were rounded up and put in uniforms. And I mean, look, it's not as like distinct, or I think in my research I learned that like I think a lot of our conception of Nazis and especially during World War II and is this very like precise, organized way of doing things, and there's actually a lot that isn't super organized and precise, and that's just something I picked up on. So you'll see a yellow star on someone's uniform, and then you won't see a yellow star on someone's uniform, and then you'll see like a different variation of a symbol, and like it's not as black and white as I think we sometimes retell it to be, in terms of like how organized they were with their markings and things like that. So
we only see your great uncle a couple times. Was there a deliberate decision in when to cut to him and when to let the animation run?
I wanted I wanted people to see him in the beginning so they know who this is and they have a face to the voice. And then I thought about cutting back and forth between him and the animation, but that just started to feel really distracting. I really wanted people to stay in the story, and the animation just worked really well, and we just kind of kept going with it. And then I did really want, he got so like, almost like adrenaline, like kind of this like rush of emotion or adrenaline at the end when he was like saying the end where this altercation occurs, that I really wanted to show his face and like his intensity. And I didn't want animation completely over that, because that was really important to me to see. I thought it was really powerful the way that he delivered that. So
cool. This isn't much of a question, but I almost, a very typical question I will ask in documentaries is, what happened afterwards? How does the rest of the story continue? So I got to say, your credit sequence is fantastic for that. I mean, it's
there's a lot more.
Yeah, but like, instead of just title cards that maybe say it, the way that you animated it as well, and getting to tell the rest of the story makes it more than just a snapshot in time. It works fantastically. What's next for the film, and is it going to more places? Is it going to show up online where anyone can see it eventually soon, or?
As of now, we're still going through festivals. It's at St. Louis Film Festival right now. It's going to be at Holy Shorts next week, and it's going to be, I'm looking at my calendar right now. So it's just St. Louis and Holy Shorts coming up right now, I believe. And it's at Norwich Film Festival currently as well. Sorry. It's very hard to keep track when things are all online. But those three festivals, and it's still, so CineQuest still has it also, because they did an extension, so you can also watch it there.
Any bites for distribution?
I do not have distribution right now, no.
Cool. Working on anything else besides potentially more of this, hopefully?
I would like to do more of this. I am in like a brainstorming, kind of laying the groundwork process of trying to expand this in some way. So
cool.
We'll see.
Great. I'll keep my fingers crossed. Thanks so much for joining us. Pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you for chatting with me.
No, it's absolutely my pleasure. All right, everyone. Thank you very much, and I'll see you back here